I'd just like to welcome everyone again to ELPCO's November online meeting. If you're having trouble logging in and you're watching this on Facebook, check the comment section there. I put a link in there that should work better. There seems to be some trouble with the link tonight, sending people to previous meetings. And you want to be at this one. This is going to be the exciting one tonight. We're going to have a lot of good things to cover. So definitely keep trying if you can't get in, and or just watch the live stream, which will be available on Facebook starting right now. Let's start off by recognizing a couple of our members that are here from the Gilmer Park Community Organization. Christina Robb is one of the board members from west of East, which is the area just west of East High School, very aptly named. Looks like you might be the only member that's currently on right now, but if anybody's calling in by phone, please let me know. Are there any board members that I'm missing? None? Okay. Let's recognize a couple of the distinguished guests we have. Wanted to point out Darren Mono, the council member for Salt Lake City Council District 5. Darren, thanks for being here. Also, Samuel Hansen, the Salt Lake City School Board member for Precinct 5. Very specific. There's districts and there's precincts. It's tricky up there. And I also wanted to mention that we have Mohammed Baid, the member-elect for Salt Lake City School District Precinct 5, who just won that election a couple weeks ago and will be taking that seat, I think, sometime in January. Let me send out one quick little email here to folks. There we go. And I think we can get started with Detective King, who I believe is on the line here. Detective King. Can you go ahead and give us an update on the Salt Lake City Police Department? What's been going on there?
Yeah, so there's a lot that's been going on. Just a lot of different stuff. I mean, as you look at...
Could you speak up a little bit? It's a little hard for me to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you might just talk pretty loud.
Okay. So there's actually a lot that's going on right now. I'll start out. I try to draw your attention to it every time, but if anybody that's new, if you're ever curious about where we're at as far as numbers, crime, all of that's available on our website. If you go to the slcpd.com, you can go to open data, and then you can click down on CompStat, and it breaks it down. It breaks Salt Lake down into the 7 voting districts, and of course we're 5, and so you can look at everything. They kind of do like a year to date, or they do like an beginning of the year to the end of the year. They also have every month broken down, and so looking at the numbers, there's constantly roller coasters. There's a couple of the times where some of the calls are up and some of them are down, but definitely, like, when you look at the year to date, it seems like crime has definitely been going on a rise, and so there's been some restructuring going on, and I'll just let you know that one of the things they're doing, trying to alleviate some of the problems. I know that there's been concern as far as response times, and that is that units like mine, the CIU, we're actually being dissolved. So January 10th, we're all going back to patrol to try to help out with some of those numbers. And so there's a lot going on, trying to recruit and trying to get people to back to patrol to help out, to alleviate some of those issues. So one of the things I've talked about before, but I want to bring it up again, is there's sometimes where there might be crimes where you might want to report something, but if there's no suspect or no witness, one of the things you can do, we definitely want that information, and trying to maybe alleviate the frustration of waiting for an officer to show up. There's actually, you can get online and file reports, and it's a great way to get it documented, at least with us. If you need to go through insurance, you can let them know that it's been reported. But anyways, all of that stuff is reviewed. And one of the things I thought was kind of interesting, I was told it's always been on there, but it's the first time I had seen it, is they actually have a link that if there are children that have any kind of special needs, that you can actually get on and register and let the department know about that. So that way, I was trying to get information, and that's given out to our officers, so that if officers are responding to a house on a specific incident, then they have some kind of updated information, which I thought was kind of a neat little thing. I've never noticed it before, but it's popped up, and I've been told that it's there. It's been there for a while, so it's kind of a great tool. There's a lot of stuff there, and yeah, there's a lot that's going on. A lot of frustrations as far as like with the calls, as far as I know a lot of it's going back to COVID, whether it's with the jail or officers being quarantined just as precaution, or maybe they've gotten the COVID, and so there's been a lot that's going on, and a lot that the department's trying to change around to alleviate some of that stuff. And so, is there anything specific anybody has questions for me about?
Feel free to ask them in the chat or just pipe up and ask Detective King directly.
Okay. So I just wanted to say though that yeah, there's, like I said, there's numbers where we've looked at it, and sometimes, like last week, some of the numbers were in the red. This week, for the last 7 days, they've been in the green. But it's definitely something we work on, and we definitely want to know where there's those issues coming in. So please definitely let us know. And I think I've been with District 5 for the last at least almost 3 years, and I really appreciated the time I've gotten to know everybody and work with everybody. So thanks for reaching out and let me try to see what I can do to help out. And as my squad goes away, one of the things they're trying to do is they're going to be starting another squad called COP, which is Community Oriented Policing, where they're going to have at least 3 officers assigned to it that are going to, I think, kind of do what I've been doing, just on a different type of a scale. But there's going to be at least some kind of a contact for that. I just don't know exactly how soon that's going to be incorporated, but I think it's going to be incorporated fairly soon.
I have just one question, King.
Yes, sir.
What type of crimes? I know you said crimes are on the rise. What type of crimes are there, and in what geographical location are they? In regards to our area.
Yeah, so a lot of it's the property theft when you're looking at it. Whether there's been a lot of car burglaries, larcenies from yards, a lot of the just kind of a mix of a lot of stuff. A lot of it's just that larceny, the theft. And as far as the report specifically for District 5, it covers the entire district, so it's also covering the ballpark and Liberty Wells and East Liberty. So you can get on and go to there are some other functions where you can get on and break it down more to your specific area, but it's kind of just scattered all across District 5, and some of it overlaps into some of the other districts. But a lot of it's just like I said, just those the burglaries or the car prowls and the thefts and that.
This is George Chapman. I have a question.
Shoot.
I
lost you, George.
George, are you there? We lost after your first word. While we try to get George back, does anybody else have questions for Detective King? Things you've noticed, things you want him to investigate? Detective King, the changeover to the new sort of liaison system is going to happen in January. Is that right?
I believe so. I don't know an exact official start time, but I think it's something they're going to be looking at fairly quickly.
And I know Amy Hawkins from Ballpark Community Council emailed Weston Clark when that announcement came out, and she heard back, actually copied all of us on it, is that it's going to be very similar to the current community intelligence system we have now. It's just a lot of the reporting structure is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to be fewer chains of command between you and for instance, lieutenants and the chief. So hopefully we won't notice any big difference here. It's a lot more. It seems like it's a lot of internal changes. George, are you there?
This is George.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, good. Detective King, Salt Lake City Police Department is still under booking restrictions. I understand you still can only arrest and book first and second degree felonies. Is that still correct?
To be honest, it's been a while since I've personally taken somebody to jail, but my understanding of the way it works is that every day there's kind of different, depending on how things are, openings or whatever, it kind of fluctuates. So I won't say that it's specifically you can only arrest and take certain people to jail, but there's different extenuating circumstances, and every day is different as far as jail staffing, the availability of beds and whatever.
Almost no beds are available.
Covert scare. And so, yeah, and it's been a while since I've looked specifically at that, but that was the way I understood it was working.
Yeah,
So
I'd like
every
to
day it's
find
gonna
out
look different.
what the situation is, because we're having an argument with CCJJ about that, and the JRI audit didn't pick up the fact that Salt Lake County Jail only allows first and second degree felonies, and when you check the dashboard, there are almost no misdemeanors in jail. So we're just wondering.
Have you reached out to the jail about that specifically?
What was that?
Have you reached out specifically to the Salt Lake County Jail to see how they work that?
I haven't talked to him for a couple of months also, so I don't know what the latest is. My issue was an argument this week with CCJJ that did not know there was a booking restriction at the
George,
county jail.
One issue that might be happening too is COVID-19. In my day
Oh, it
job,
is, yeah.
I've been lobbying a lot for not keeping people in jail unnecessarily, especially those with health conditions. Why don't we carry this conversation off this meeting, and I promise I'll help follow up on that, George, because I agree I haven't checked in on that in a couple of weeks. So any other questions for Detective King? I know there's been a couple of car thefts that I've seen posted on social media. They're not, basically stolen out of people's driveways in the middle of the night. Is there anything that's popped up on CompStat, or Detective King, or that you're aware of?
It's been about a week or two since I've talked with our sergeant over auto theft, and that was with that COVID-19 that you mentioned. That's one of the things that hampers with people in jail. But I know there's several people that they're looking at and they're tying and trying to build cases, and I know that there's people that they're looking at and that they can get charges on. It's just going through the process right now, going through the jail, going through the court system, and trying to get all that worked out.
Got it.
There's people that they are familiar with, they know them by name, and they're watching them and trying to do what they can. But yeah.
Got it, because we've noticed just even in the Gilmer Park area and Liberty Wells, just a couple of instances which have struck up in the past couple of days. If there's no more questions for Detective King, I think we could move on to the next part of our program. We do have a lot going on tonight, so we want to keep this going. Detective King, also, if this is the last time we see you for a meeting, we appreciate your help over the last couple of years. So thank you for serving us and your community in this capacity. So
appreciate it.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation about 5G cell towers, which normally wouldn't be that exciting, but boy, it's become really exciting. But before we jump to that, I want to recognize a couple of other board members who have joined. Jeff Larson, good to see you, Jeff. Jeff represents, and I always got to look at this, East Emerson. So thanks for being here. I forgot to mention that Tim Cosgrove is here. He's the Salt Lake City Mayor's liaison. Thanks for being here, Tim. And let's see here. We've got, I think, Judy Short is here as the land use advisor for ELPCO. And then I think I saw Ann Weaver, who is our newly installed treasurer. So thanks for being here tonight. If I forgot anybody, just chat me to let me know. But next up, we have a presentation about 5G cell towers that Rebecca Huber and William Huff, the historic Gilmer representatives, have put together. And I will let them take it away. You guys can start talking and share your screen. I think we'll learn a lot from this.
Okay, so hi. Thank you so much for letting us present. We have to first say that we did not know anything about 5G. And we were really interested, and we asked some questions. And so we gathered a lot of information from just talking to people and our research. And we wanted to bring it back and share it with you because recently we've seen some 5G towers come up in ELPCO in the neighborhood. So just starting with what 5G networks are, they're really designed to kind of have a faster data speeds. They are really made to reduce lag time. I guess kind of when 3G happened and then 4G happened, now we're able to we can open emails and stream movies and things with 4G on our phone, but 5G is supposed to be much, much faster than that. It is a high frequency band of the wireless spectrum, and because it's such a high frequency, the waves have a harder time traveling through objects such as like trees and buildings, and that signal gets weaker over long distances. So it requires a lot of small cell site technology with antennas really close together. And this is, I think, why we're seeing more and more of these cell towers come up around the neighborhood. So this is a picture of one that is in ELPCO. I believe it's over on Princeton.
Princeton 11th East.
Yeah. And Will's going to tell you about how it works.
So right now in ELPCO, we've just seen the Verizon towers, but there's the potential for each major cell phone company to build their own 5G network. So we could see AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, those towers coming into our area as well. We've seen that permits have been approved for AT&T to start building their own 5G network. And I think they're starting up in Rose Park area. And so the way 5G works, it's not one big cell phone tower, it's just a bunch of smaller ones since they have to be closer together. And to make use of the 5G speeds, you'll have to have a 5G enabled phone. And the current iPhone 12 is one that can do that.
There's also a list, I think, a link there. But I think one of the things that we found out, which we didn't really know anything about, was that these 5G aren't really going to boost the 4G phones, or if you only have like a iPhone like I do, not an new iPhone, you won't probably experience any benefit from that, boosting that signal or anything like that. So one of the questions that have come up a lot lately is just whether or not 5G networks are safe. There's kind of been a lot of conspiracy theories out there with the 5G. Through our research, we found out that 5G, even though they're a higher wavelength and they're more energized radio waves, there's been no evidence of health effects that are different from having the 4G networks that we already have or our current cell phones, although there haven't been a lot of studies that have been done, and there's a lot more research that I think is needed in this area. And then one of the things that Jason so helpfully did was reach out to Chris Norlam, and he helped us find, he's the manager of these cell tower installations. And so we kind of sent him several questions that he went through and let us know kind of some answers that we had, where they're putting them, things like cost. And so one of the things that we found out through this process is there's a federal mandate to allow these 5G cell towers to be built in public right-of-ways. And that is also through the Utah state law as well. And so there's no limit on the number of poles. Like Will mentioned, there's several companies that are starting to install them. So the ones that you're seeing now, though, I believe are in this area, are Verizon. And the way that the lease works for these these cell towers are that they last for 10 years, and then they can have a 10-year extension on that lease. And so one of the things that we were interested about, especially for this area, was kind of some design standards. Chris did provide us some information about specific standards that they have to meet as far as height requirements and things like that, but there really is no city or state requirements for camouflaging the poles. may build them on like the current existing street lights or traffic poles and things like that. But Chris stated that the majority of the poles that are existing are not really strong enough to support the additional weight of these 5G equipment. And so therefore they're kind of installing these monopoles, which we showed a picture of, and we're going to show you another one kind of all over, and you're seeing them pop up. We also asked if Salt Lake City is receiving any fees or money for these cell towers. And this is the information that Chris sent me, and actually you kind of have to read through a lot of information to find it. But it sounds like just really based on the application, it's the fee that they're receiving is based on kind of whether they're going to put it on an existing pole, or if they're going to put it, if they're putting it in a place that's not under the Utah code. But then on an annual basis, the fees are provided for, I believe it's 3.5% of the revenue that comes from the wireless provider, or $250, whichever is greater, but not more than $250, it sounds like, for each facility. And so one of the things that we did to kind of understand where these were coming up in ELPCO, or maybe just get an idea, is we used a system that some people on the board helped us find, which is great. It's the Salt Lake City Citizen Access Portal for engineering permits. And we had asked Chris if there's like a master plan that each one of the providers had given, but there's not. And so
well, I think those cell phone companies do have a master plan. I'm sure they know where they want to put the towers, but they are doing it piecemeal permits. I think it sort of seems like they're trying to sneak them in by just doing one permit at a time, rather than just letting everyone know where all the towers are going to be.
And Chris did say that they were not required to give a master plan, but that they are just doing individual permits. And so as of, I believe the 14th of November, we found 18 small cell tower permits just in this ELPCO area, I guess. And you can see them kind of on the map. Maybe you've seen some of them come up. And they really, I think that we might potentially even see more of these. And these are just the Verizon ones, I should say. So one of the things we did was we looked at the current Verizon 5G coverage just kind of in the ELPCO area. And sorry, I don't have the boundaries or anything drawn out because this is just a screenshot from Verizon's website. But you can see there is kind of a spot, like I wouldn't want to say a dead spot, but it looks like there's an area where there's not 5G coverage. So maybe that's why we're going to see more towers in this area. And maybe some of the towers that they've already installed will kind of take over and fill in for that spot.
Very nice red on red map that Verizon uses.
It's red on red. And so one of the things, kind of how we got interested in learning more about this is we did talk to George and Lori Norman, and I think that they might be on the call today. So I'd love to have them jump in if they're interested. But there was a 40-foot cell tower that was installed right near the roundabout on an utility easement that is connected to their yard. And I believe they had very little notice and had a difficult time trying to get a hold of Verizon. But I'm not sure if George or Lori, if you wanted to say anything, or we don't want to speak for you on your behalf, unless you want us to.
I can say something if you want. This is George Norman. Should I go ahead, Jason? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. To give you a quick take on that, it was about 2 weeks ago. I walked out my front door, and they were in my front yard digging. I had absolutely no notice at all. We had spent, you need to mute that. We'd spent about, 2 years working with the city and traffic on the roundabout, and they were great to work with. Had a lot of cooperation, really good communication. And this whole tower thing, I'm just shocked. We had 3 different contractors or installers, And they all came out and said that they thought the tower was in the wrong place. Because if you look at this picture, and thank you for Rebecca for posting this picture, if you look to the right, I have this huge park strip, and over toward the far north side of it, which is to the right of it, is their power junction. And they said someone made a mistake. The towers are always next to the power junction box. So they had to tunnel under the sidewalk, go all the way across the park strip, and then come back up and then go up 9th South toward East High School to find power. And they said, we've never had to do this before. There's something weird. When I talked to Chris Norland, or pardon me if I mispronounce his last name, he was a nice gentleman. He tried to tell me, and of course, I understand that he looks at maps all the time and things, that they thought they had the tower in my backyard where it was kind of secluded. And I said, no. I said, no, the tower's in my front yard. So there was a real rush to get it up. I did talk to legal counsel to see what rights I had. You know, I understand there's a utility easement that's barely inside our sidewalk, and they're using every millimeter of it. On top of that, they're also on top of a water well. The city came out, they told them just to pump the water out and put the cement in. They dug a hole, they came back 2 days later, the hole was full of water. They said, just pump it out and put it in. So, I mean, I don't know if that's drinking water or where that water goes. And then on top of that, I mean, we've got all this space in this park strip, and I'm just shocked. It's a 45-foot tower. It's not 40, it's 45. But they couldn't go over next to the power box, so they've got plenty of room. And so anyway, I did talk to a lawyer to see what my rights were very quickly, because it'll happen so quickly. They thought we could maybe temporarily block this. He made a suggestion that I might want to park my car over the hole and stop them. And so we did call the mayor's office. I did call Mr. Cosgrove, but he was probably, you know, too busy. I understand there's a lot of things going on in the mayor's office. I did reach out to the engineers. But I do want to finish by saying one thing. I talked to Verizon, and I only talked to them after I made several calls. The guy that called me back, he's out of, he's north here, up in like Kaysville. I think his name was Daniel Cox. He was very sarcastic with me. He said, Mr. Norman, I'm calling you back so we can say that we've had a phone call. The tower is going in. You can say what you want. It doesn't matter. We're putting the tower in. I mean, just flat out rude to me. I mean, whatever track this 5G build out is, however long this technology is going to last, because we're already well piped in. We got Google Fiber, you know, you got Comcast, you got CenturyLink, so we've all got internet. But it's kind of like the railroad back when it went across the West. And these guys, I think there's a human element that's not being recognized, and they're off track. And my property, unfortunately, is a good example of that. They've got all this park strip. We went through this beautification thing with the roundabout, and they put it out in my front yard over a utility easement that should be underground, and it's for a cell tower. So anyway, I just wanted to share that and open for any questions. So,
thank you, George.
Thank you, George. And we just kind of wanted to also say, thinking about what you might expect, hopefully not the same experience that George and Lori had, but there's really no law or city ordinances that require them to give a proper advance notice. And that applies to all utilities, really. That's what Chris had said, and not just these cell towers. You might receive a door hanger notifying you that crews will begin, and you might not. They may close roads or restrict parking. And so we've included a few contacts to get a hold of, and we can try to answer any questions that you might have, but we're not experts, so.
Well, you guys became experts for this meeting, so thank you for doing that. One question that Judy Short had in the comments was, is there any provision to remove these towers once 6G arrives at some point in the future? Of course, we'll all be flying spaceships, I guess, by then. But did you come across anything about that? I mean, the proliferation of these towers is much more than traditional 4G and 3G towers. So hopefully they don't become dinosaurs.
Yeah, we didn't see anything about plans for the future. It just kind of seems like get this in here now.
Yeah, and supposedly this is the future, but
Yeah.
it sounds like most people won't be able to use it with their phone or.
And especially this being such a residential area where most people, I assume, probably have wired broadband. I don't know how beneficial this is going to be for most of ELPCO residents.
I think it's so you can watch Real Housewives of Salt Lake while you're walking your dog on your phone.
I look forward to doing that.
Advancing civilization one step at a time. Wow. Well, thank you, Rebecca and William. People, I think, are really appreciative for all the work you've done. We'll make the presentation available on our Facebook page and in our next newsletter as well. So if folks want to keep that contact info and you know, follow up. And George, thank you for sharing your story as well. I just noticed today they're digging one right down the street from me. So I'm sure I'll see one of those towers coming up in the next couple of days at the bottom of Michigan and 11th East. So
I could mention one other thing. Is that okay, Jason? Or
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, just real quick, I wanted to say in my conversation with the man from Verizon was that I said, well, because I have a little bit of a radio background, a little bit. And I asked him why there? Why not over in the Park Strip? And they said that they ran a test, and that was the best spot for reception was my front yard. And I said, well, how about the center of the road? And the guy said, very funny, Mr. Norman. I said, well, then tell me the difference. I said, just put it over in the Park Strip and just reset your band, just reset your antenna so that it receives a signal there. So I just wanted to include that. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay. And if anybody else has any other, questions or things that you want ELPCO to follow up on, this came out of our last meeting where folks were asking about this. And so we appreciate William and Rebecca following up and creating this great presentation. Always reach out to us if you want us to dig into another topic that's on your mind, because we kind of got this one on the cusp, and we know this is affecting other neighborhoods in Salt Lake as well. Great. We've got another.
Jason, if I could speak really quick.
Oh, yeah, sure. Is this Lori?
This is Lori. Yeah, sorry. I just want to thank Will and Rebecca. I am sure when they signed on, they were not expecting to have to dive into something like this. And we appreciate that they went to all that work. And I'm kind of blown away by the number of cell tower companies and the number of towers that it sounds like will have to go in. If everybody has to have their own, I don't understand why they can't share. But I think we might all be in for a shock, because we certainly didn't get a door hanger of any sort.
That's true. I mean, you think this is just Verizon, and there's basically 3 other major cell phone providers that could be doing this. So could be like Sherwood Forest.
I didn't come across anything about other companies' towers interfering with their own signals. I didn't find any information about that, but I don't know. We could end up with clusters. If they've got easement spots, the city may just plant clusters of them there. I don't know how it's going to work.
It could also be that Verizon is trying to a land rush type thing, trying to get in and get the best spots early before anybody else. So it could be just like in the gold rush kind of stuff. Cool. Well, thank you very much for doing all this research. We have 2 other folks who are graciously joining us tonight to talk about another issue that's big in the news, and that is the Salt Lake City School District decision on Tuesday night to investigate. I think it's kind of approved, but I guess we can hear from Samuel Hansen and Mohammed Bayed about what exactly could be in the future for Salt Lake City School District students, especially elementary students. Samuel, do you think you could kick it off by telling us what actually happened at the Tuesday meeting? It sounded like it was a decision, but I think you're going to be talking about it at some future meetings and perhaps flushing out some of the details. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. So just for context, I'm sure most of you know this already, but for anybody who hasn't been following this closely, we are the only district in the state of Utah that started almost entirely in remote learning. And the reasoning for that is not something that I need to explain to any of you, but we had originally set metrics of case positivity of 5% and a rolling daily average of 10 new cases per 100,000 as our criteria for return. And that seemed like kind of a reasonable bar. It was similar to what a lot of national education organizations were talking about in the summer. But we're lucky in that we have a superintendent who's a scientist, as well as an excellent educator in Larry Madden. And he has been attending meetings with the county health department every Tuesday morning with our board president, Melissa Ford, who represents Precinct 6. And they have learned quite a bit from the natural experiment that we have created by starting in remote in Salt Lake and having all of the other districts around us in Salt Lake County doing some form of regular in-person learning. We have been doing small groups, I should mention, and at first that was only for English language learners, or what are now called multilingual learners, so people whose heritage language is not English, and special ed students, but we've sort of extended that to everyone who needs it, although its availability in terms of in-person can be contingent on, you know, how many teachers you have at a given school that are really comfortable with that. So that's where we were. But as I said, Superintendent Madden and Board President Melissa Ford have been attending these meetings at the County Health Department, and they have learned that we have in fact kept middle school students and high school students statistically much safer from getting the coronavirus. But what the data shows is that elementary school students, and you know, this data is not perfect because it's based on, you know, voluntary testing, and of course we can't require anyone to get a test, but it's begun to show, and this is consistent with some of the emerging science, that you know, elementary schools may not be a great source of infection or outbreaks, and they may be relatively safe for the students. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're perfectly safe for adults, but he presented this data to us on Tuesday night, along with a proposal to bring back our elementary school students in January. If there's appetite, I actually have the presentation he made with some of the numbers. So if you'd like to, we can look at that. But I think I basically summarized the conclusion, which is, you know, his recommendation is to stick to online learning for the time being for our older students, grades 7 through 12, but to begin to reopen an in-person option for pre-K through 6. Now, if your student is in remote learning and you want to stay in remote learning, we will continue to offer remote learning. I think it's fair to say that one of the biggest concerns outside of health and safety of our teachers and other school employees that I've heard from my precinct is this fear that the online learning model that we built, which I think has worked a lot better than we thought it would, or that we thought, you know, I think we've done a much better job in Salt Lake than in many places that are in remote. And I think there's a lot of fear that the online learning model will suffer because, you know, the truth is your teacher may shift to being an in-person teacher if they are somebody who's willing or even eager to do that. And there are probably 5 to 10% of our teaching force, our teachers unions survey indicates, are in that camp. But I have pushed and others have pushed to make sure that we do everything we can to think of online learning as continuing to be the sort of default for the rest of this year, and that we don't see what you see in some other classrooms around the valley, where you've got teachers trying to teach to a Zoom audience like this and an in-person audience at the same time, which the feedback I've gotten and many others have gotten is that that doesn't work very well. So I do have a lot of confidence in our superintendent to make this work in a creative way. I don't have the details, and we didn't really talk about those details. I don't think we're looking at a hybrid model. I think it would be probably 4 to 5 days a week. My assumption is that Wednesdays will remain an asynchronous day for both in-person and online students, as they have been since the beginning of this school year. But again, like Jason said, we didn't get into those details. What we did do, and there was a lot of argument and back and forth on this, but we modified the superintendent's proposal a little bit, and what ended up getting voted on was a compromise set of dates. So we will begin to offer an in-person option for pre-K through first grade in the last week of January, and then grades 2 through 3 in the first week of February, and grades 4 through 6 in the second week of February. Now, of course, as with anything this year, in the time of coronavirus, that could change. And I think that there is an appetite, and again, this is something I've heard from my constituents, and I think other board members would say the same thing. There's an appetite for metrics, like the metrics we established in the fall. The truth is, I don't think that this data that indicates that kids have a lower risk, I don't think that that points easily to a set of metrics, but I think the superintendent may come back at our December 1st meeting with some guiding principles that he would use to shut this down or postpone it further if need be. Yeah, so that's sort of that's a recap of Tuesday, and I have a couple of other things I want to talk about, but maybe I'll stop and see if anyone has any questions at this point about what I've said so far.
Got it. Any questions for Sam Hansen?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. This is Elizabeth. I have a question. Thank you so much for being here and for helping to provide clarity on the board meeting. I have 3 students at 3 different schools in the area, but my middle child is at Emerson in the dual immersion program. And very quickly, I heard from many parents in the dual immersion program their concerns about potentially not having their teacher if they move to online. They feel that because we're in that unique situation where we have the Spanish instruction, there's a lot of question in the parent community. Like, they sort of feel like they're being forced to going back in person because there's not an ELP option or a language option if they stay online. And I didn't know if that was fact or if you are still looking at what's going to happen with some of the special programs like this ELP situation, the dual immersion situation.
That's a great question, and I have been talking about that and hearing the planning and discussion that's gone on around that at SCCs, both at Emerson as well as at our other 2 ELP magnet. For those that don't know, ELP is the extended learning program, so it's our gifted and talented program in the district. And Emerson has this dual immersion version of that. And then we also have the curriculum and assessment program at Hawthorne. So there's been discussion at the school level and between those 3 principals about what will happen, depending on what each class cohort wants to do, because they each only have 1 teacher per, I think that's true at Emerson. I'm not sure. I know it's true at Whittier and Hawthorne, but I believe it's also true at Emerson that they only have
5th and 6th grade. Oh, I didn't mean to speak over you. The 5th and 6th grade is a split, but in that instance, we have 1 English teacher and 1 Spanish teacher. And so one teacher teaches 5th and 6th in English, and another teacher teaches 5th and 6th Spanish. But otherwise, you're right. It is a 1-to-1 ratio at Emerson.
So there aren't multiple cohorts. So we can't have 1 online teacher and 1 in-person teacher. So there's been discussion about, well, basically, could the class vote? And of course, that also depends on what the teacher wants to do. we've talked about that in SCC, school community council meetings, but that's never been a board discussion. So I think some of that will evolve at the site as a kind of a site-based decision. But I would want to make sure that I said that I don't think we want to do anything differently for CNA or ELP than we would for any other class. So if we're going to allow ELP classes to vote basically on what they want to do, assuming the teacher is willing to go either way, then I would hope we would do that for everyone. But that's exactly the kind of question that I think we're going to have to talk more about on December 1st and maybe even January 5th, which will be Mohammed's first meeting. I'll stop here now and introduce Mohammed. So I've been on the board since May of last year. I took the seat after my mother, who did it for 14 years, Heather Bennett, passed away, and it's been an honor to kind of try to fill her shoes, which I could never do. But Mohammed Bayed, who's here, won the election, and I did not run, so it was not there was no contention between the two of us. But he will be taking over in January. So, but to go back to your question, Elizabeth, yes, I think that's what we're going to have to figure out. So you know, the truth is, you may want to start trying to get a sense of what April Reynolds, the principal, is thinking, and also what your teacher is thinking, and the rest of the class. I think it's really hard to know. I mean, we know that from our survey earlier in the fall that at that point the district was pretty much split between people who wanted to stay remote until we reached our metrics and people who wanted to go back if an in-person option became available. I would think that would have changed given the kind of crazy situation we're in now. But I don't know. So it'll be very interesting to see. And there's a lot that we still have to figure out. I was pushing for a later goal. I was pushing for us to kind of aim for the middle of February or the end of February, actually, which is the end of the trimester. But I just want to say again that, as hard as this is, and as much as I questioned the timing because of the input I was getting from constituents, I do have a lot of faith in our superintendent to make this work if anybody can. I think it's just a really hard, there are no easy answers to these questions. So, but I'll put my contacts in the chat, and if you have trouble or you want to just talk to me or talk to Mohammed about what's going on at the local level, we want to keep abreast of that. Let's see, several teachers commented on the Tribune article that they were not involved in the decision process. Can you comment on this? So I think one thing that's really hard is that, and this is something I will just be frank about because I'm reaching the end of my term. And this is my opinion, so I'm sure there are people who disagree with me. I think we lost a lot of trust with our previous superintendent before Larry. I think it's always been hard for teachers to feel they could reach out to the school board. And, we have a culture of shared governance in our district, which means that at the site, like I was saying, a lot of these decisions that might in other districts be made at the district office get made at the school. But the truth is the board makes a lot of decisions that affect teachers and affect everybody who works in our schools, nutrition workers, janitors, bus drivers, etc. And so, I always try to encourage teachers to feel like they can reach out to me, and I'm sure Mohammed will do the same. And that should be a safe space, but it's hard because realistically you have to build that trust over time. And I have benefited from a ton of inherited trust that I didn't really earn. So I know Mohammed will earn the trust of teachers, but that realistically that really does take time. So I do want to say that I think there was some confusion created at the November 3rd board meeting because we were talking about the surveys that had been done of both families and teachers in the fall. And then we were talking about surveying the teaching staff once a date had been established to go back or to offer the option to go back. And I think those two, I mean, at one point we called the survey that we would do afterwards a questionnaire, because we would really need close to 100% participation on that for both families and teachers. But I think those two things got conflated in people's minds a little bit. And, you know, the problem with this is it's a moving target with a lot of moving variables. And so, you know, now that we have a date, it's not the date that necessarily all of us would have chosen, but at least it's a goalpost where we can say to teachers, you know, based on that date, based on what you know now, what's your comfort level? And, you know, I think on the board, there's an appetite for this to be a totally consent-based process for teachers, and I would hope other employees too. I don't know how realistic that is from an administrative perspective. And again, I have a ton of confidence in the superintendent that he'll do his best. But I think it's going to be really hard because we may have more demand for in-person learning than. So, you know, again, that's where I feel like if you hear somebody say that they are feeling coerced to doing something they don't want to do, tell them to call me or Mohammed. We will keep their feelings and their information private, and we need to know these things because we can't make good decisions unless we hear from a broad group of stakeholders. Anything else I can answer before I talk a little more about what's going to happen next?
Sam, if I would just, you know, hi everyone, this is Mohammed. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your vote. And for those that did not vote for me, please do not worry. I'm still here to serve our community and our students. A lot of people, they look at me and they're like, seriously, why are you running right at this time? And of course, my answer is, as always, there is no better time than now. It's been quite a 2020, and I can't wait until it is over. But I'm really, really excited to, you know, get my feet out there and get to know the teachers, the principals, the families. You know, Sam has done an amazing job. I mean, he is like a walking encyclopedia of, you know, District 5 when it comes to school. I've been learning so much from him, and he's been very patient, and that just tells you that I have really big shoes to fill. Is that correct? Yeah, is that how it's said? Yeah, I'm still like dealing with the idiomatic expressions in English, you know, excuse me, I'm from Morocco, so. You know, to the families who are concerned, you know, there are a lot of challenges for sure. For me, I will always put the safety of teachers and students front, period. The reason I say this because those teachers are parents, they are grandparents, they are children, and we owe it to them. And the reason I say we owe it to them, every one of us does understand and appreciate how much work teachers do since March. Those of us, you know, who are parents, we will never forget that. It was like, oh my goodness, how do the teachers do this? We just have 3 kids at home and we're like losing our minds, you know, and the list goes on and on. So it was surprising for me to see the vote that the school is gonna go back, you know, for the pre-K and the first grade earlier, because the cases are off the roof right now. However, I have a full trust in the interim superintendent. He is fantastic. He is for teachers and he is for students and basically anyone that is operating school. And that to me, gives me a great hope that we will be able to achieve amazing things as time goes. Of course, there's going to be challenges. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. We're going to have differences, but that's how we come to better solutions, is by learning from each other. So I ask that you guys, be patient with me. I will do my best to respond to the emails as fast as I can. And if you want them faster, I can write them in Arabic. I don't know if you'll be able to understand that. But overall, I've been very blessed to be in this country. I it makes me very humble to see my kids having a better education than I have had. And also, it's very humbling to see how many people, how much support I received. And not only that, you should have seen people in my village. I mean, they were sitting in front of TV, like ready to watch some Barcelona, Madrid soccer team. They were sitting down watching the TV to see the news, because I made it to the national news in Morocco. And it's just like, it was just the first time for them to see something like that is happening. And for me, this is but a testimony of the goodness of, Americans, no matter who says what. It's you, you are the representation of the American dream. And I hope that I'll be able to satisfy the responsibilities that I'll have upon my shoulder. And Sam may have his number. He knows I'm not gonna let him go to sleep for sure. All right, looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Sam.
Thank you, Mohammed. I didn't know you were on TV in Morocco. That's really cool. So Jason, I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time, but I just wanted to say a couple things about what's happening on December 1st, if that's okay. So we have, at my last meeting, which is December 1st, which is also the last meeting of this calendar year, a few things that you might be interested in hearing about or participating in the discussion about. So the one piece of the proposal that we postponed for further discussion is this part of the proposal that addressed alternative return, or if a school wanted to go back just for elementary schools before the dates that we voted on. And so I don't know who will apply for that process. Again, it's kind of a shared governance process. It has to go through the School Improvement Council, which is the faculty body, and the School Community Council, and certain other sort of planning requirements need to be fulfilled. But I hope that we will have a robust conversation about what that means. I don't know who will apply, but I think that there's a fear that I'm hearing from my constituents that write to me and call me, that it will be only schools on the East Bench, which has some obvious problems that, I mean, it's whether or not you think that opening these two options will in fact give kids a better educational outcome. It's bad optics either way for us to open. And I think kids absorb stuff like that, and they remember decisions that are made where we don't live up to what we're saying about equity across racial lines and socioeconomic lines and geographic lines. So I agree that that's something we need to think hard about. And like I said, I don't know who will apply. But if it is only schools from one end of the city, I think we should think hard about what that means to let them open early. So that will be one discussion item. I'm hoping we'll hear more about what the day will look like, what it will mean for schools in terms of will they end the day early and have some extra time at the end of the day to attend to online students? I've heard all kinds of different schedules or ways of making this work posited. And I think I think that might end up being a very site-based decision. I think it might end up looking very different depending on the needs of each school community. But I hope we'll hear a little bit more about that and maybe have a chance for some public comment to address that. The two other quick things that we're talking about are a student board member policy. And that's just something that the policy subcommittee of the board has been working on to kind of address the way we choose our student board member. We always have one from each of our comprehensive high schools, and that leaves out Innovations, which is down here in my precinct, attached to what used to be South High, and Slicksy and Rose Park, and let's see, am I forgetting anyone else? Or Horizonte, of course, which is also in my precinct. So I know they've been talking about that, and I'm not sure exactly what their plan is. The other thing that I have been sort of trying to lead the charge on a little bit is establishing an RDA policy. Our district is a taxing entity, and we participate in projects of the city's redevelopment agency. The two most recent examples of that are the 9 Line and the State Street project that we just signed on to last year. And many of you probably know this because you're sort of city policy types, but what that means is that the redevelopment agency draws a line around an area that they want to invest money in. And as the area grows in taxable value, we give all or most of that growth over a term of 20 or 25 years, usually, to the redevelopment agency. And this can be really good for schools. I think, in the past, that overpass that goes over at North Temple and Fourth West that sort of connects West High to the area to the west of it, I think that was partially paid for with RDA money, and I think that's a really great thing for our students. You'd be surprised how many kids walk from Rose Park to West High every day. But I've talked about this with Darren Mono, who's been very generous with his time and thoughtful, and a few other council members. I feel like the board just needs some guiding principles for how we enter into those agreements to make sure that we're really taking our financial responsibility to students seriously and tracking what happens to that money to make sure that it's being spent on things that benefit our current and future students and not just kind of open-ended development mandates. So we'll be talking about that a little bit, hopefully, and but probably mostly hearing about the plan for elementary schools. So if you're interested in speaking at our meeting on Tuesday the 1st, you can email the superintendent's secretary, whose name is Lisa Alleman. And if you forget that, you can reach out to me and I'll set you up with that. But I'll put my email and my phone number and her email in the chat. And you can also probably reach out to Mohammed. I know Mohammed's been using moforschoolboard@gmail.com, which is, he posted his cell phone number too. I was gonna let him off the hook for that, but I guess it's good to just get used to having people having your cell phone number. So yes, lots to think about. Any other questions for either of us before we let you guys move on to your next agenda item? I do want to say, and I hope I won't embarrass her, but we have Heather Newell here, who's a principal at one of our elementary schools at Backman, and she's just fantastic. So I wanted to recognize her. She's a great educator and been a great mentor to me while I've been on the board.
Great. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Mohammed, for that overview. And looks like the next board meeting is going to be just as important and interesting for finding out some of the details going forward. We appreciate you putting your contact info there, Mohammed. Sam, if you don't mind doing the same, That way folks can kind of tag team you guys for the next month or so, and then we'll have Mohammed take it over and get the deluge so of contacts. I wanted to break our agenda a little bit and ask Darren Mono, the Salt Lake City Council member for District 5, to give us an update about what's going on at the council. They've had quite a few kind of big meetings with big topics. So Darren, if you don't mind giving us an update, and then we'll move on to the Google Fiber survey.
Sounds good. One of the big topics of discussion the last couple of meetings has been the fleet block. And I'm not sure if anyone's aware, that's sort of if you just follow the 9 line from ELPCO all the way down and get to 3rd West, you'll run into the fleet block. It's almost a full city block that the city owns, and it used to be where the fleet was housed. So the police and fire vehicles were housed and serviced there. It's not been used for a decade or 2 decades, for a while. I don't even know how long, but discussions about how to redevelop that have been in the works for at least a decade that I'm aware of. When I moved back from graduate school here, they were already talking about how to redevelop and how to use the fleet block. So it's been sitting there. It's been multiple administrations that have not been able to sort of redevelop and use the fleet block. And planning department had put together a new zone type, form-based urban 3, which is a new zone that doesn't exist anywhere in the city, and they created it, and we're going to apply it to the fleet block with the intention that it would then be continued to be applied across the granary. And so that was how the city council decision was packaged, was those 2 things. But what happened in the last few months, or the last several months, is that a lot of murals have been painted on the fleet block, and those murals have become really important to a lot of people in our community. And so when they found out that we were talking about rezoning the fleet block, it was viewed as a way to destroy the murals. Again, this was all something that had been in the works well before this year. But we've had a lot of people at our meetings talking about that. So that's changed the conversation quite a bit about the fleet block. In addition to the community talking about the murals and not wanting the murals to be taken down, and I'll acknowledge that that's not everybody in the community that appreciates the murals. Some people have also commented to us that they want the murals taken down. So I just want to acknowledge that it's not unanimous, but a lot of people have commented about keeping the murals. In addition to that, the Central Ninth Community Council has asked Anna and myself and their other council members to fight for some open space and a park on the fleet block. I know Councilmember Johnston, Councilmember Dugan have all discussed wanting to have parks and open space there. So on Tuesday, we closed the public hearing and did not take action, meaning we did not create the new FBUN3 zone, and we did not apply that zone anywhere. So what I'm hoping happens is that we can decouple those things, because the FBUN3 is supposed to be applied throughout the entire granary potentially, or in certain places throughout the granary district. So I want us to have the discussion about the zone itself and whether that's right, without the discussion of applying it to anywhere. And then have a separate discussion about what we do with the fleet block. It's city-owned, taxpayer, publicly owned property. So we need to create something that works for the community and works for everybody. And I think that because of the significance of those murals, it's sort of been, the discussion's been, it has changed. And we need to separate those 2 things. What does the future of the granary look like as a whole, and what's the future of that specific block? Happy to answer questions on that. I do want to also just mention that on December 1st, we're going to have a large planning discussion about a lot of the affordable housing initiatives that the city is doing. A lot of people like Judy Short, who's here on this call, have been kind of giving us a hard time because we're looking at one piece at a time. There's there's like a list of 6 or 8 different things that we are looking at to try and create affordable housing within the city, and just try and create housing in general, but also affordable housing. And we're gonna, on December 1st, look at those all in context of each other. So it'll be a big sort of robust discussion about the future of affordable housing and housing in general within the city. And so I would encourage you to tune into that if that's something you're at all interested in. That'll be on our work session, so the one that starts at 2. I think Jason had also asked me to give an update on the Telegraph Exchange. So we did approve that. There were 3 caveats that I pushed for. One was making sure that the developer could not build more than what they proposed, because one thing that I'm always conscious of is if we approve a rezone based on a plan the developer shows, they can then turn around and do whatever they want that fits within that rezone. They don't have to follow the plan that they presented. So I made sure that the overall combined 2 parcels cannot be more than the 23 units, that the townhouses, so the zone that we approved for was RMF 45, meaning that they could go 45 feet tall. They showed us images of 3-story townhouses, so we put in a restriction that the new townhouses cannot be more than 30 feet tall, even though the zone allows 45. That there's some exception for parapets. And then the third thing was that 3 of the units would be restricted to 80% AMI affordability for a period of no less than 5 years. That's not, I wish it could be more units and I wish it could be indefinite, but it was something that 3 additional affordable units that we didn't have before. So the reason why the affordability was so important is because one of the things that I did was I actually went and knocked doors up and down 800 East, because my personal beliefs about density in the area were different from what I was hearing from the community and from some of your residents, also different from what I had heard from the business community who had supported the application. And so I wanted to just make sure I was hearing from everybody. And most of the people that lived on the street that had not previously contacted me were renters and talked about how the neighborhood was getting too expensive for them to live in and rent in. So, and Anna Valdemoros and I were both there knocking doors. And so Anna actually took the initiative to call the developer and ask for him to restrict at least as many units as he was taking away, which is 2, but he was willing to do 3. So those were some of the things that played into my decision there. I'm happy to field any questions about that or anything else that the City Council is doing.
Thank you, Darren.
Or we can go on to the next thing. Thank you, everybody, for letting me join you this month.
Thanks. I put up I think a map of the fleet block in the chat section. I don't know if it's accessible, but as Darren said, it's just down 900 south, between 300 west and 400 west, I believe. I was hoping that it would actually be like a battleship fleet, but you know, unfortunately, my hopes are dashed again. Okay, well, now we're a little bit over time, but of course we had some really interesting discussions. I want to go into the Google Fiber survey that ELPCO put in the chat right now. I just put a link where you can download it. Basically, again, at the end of last month's meeting, people were like, hey, we need to find out what's going on with Google Fiber. They're coming into ELPCO. People need to find out if it's a good deal or not. What has been the experience of other people who have had it? So we put together a quick survey. We had 119 people fill it out in 5 days. So that's pretty good. About 60 or 70 of them are non-Google Fiber folks, and about 50 or so were people who actually had Google Fiber. So you can download that link there and you can check it out. I won't actually go into the survey. I was going to do a screen share and everything like that. But I can just tell you that the theme of tonight will be careful of people digging in your yard. From George Norman's experience with the 5G tower and with Google Fiber, because most people who have Google Fiber are happy with it and happy with the service, happy with the price. In fact, most of them actually spend under $75 a month for their internet, which is a lot lower than people with other providers like CenturyLink and Comcast. But the one thing they warn is that the people doing the installation will destroy your yard and then cut out your sprinklers, destroy your plants, spend 7 days and then go away and not come back. And it can be a disaster. So if you're getting Google Fiber installed, the takeaway lesson from the folks who have had it is watch them like a hawk and make sure they're doing it right and they're putting in the right spot and they're not drilling into your gas line. and other exciting things that could happen. So the service is good, the speed is good, the price is good, the installation is sketchy. So be careful with that. You can check out the survey results. I included a lot of people's short form responses as well, which is full of lots of valuable information, especially from those that have had Google Fiber installed. As I mentioned, it's a split survey. So the first part is people who have Google Fiber. The second part is those that don't have it. There's kind of a divider in the middle. It splits at about page 16 in what I put up there. So feel free to take a look at it. We'll put it out on social media as well. And I know that Google Fiber is moving further into ELPCO every month. So it should soon become available for more and more folks here. And now we know that you just make sure they don't blow up your house when they put it in, because it's great to have fast internet, but not great if you're living in a tent. One other quick update before we go to Tim Cosgrove, the Salt Lake City Mayor's office, and that is about the 900 South Roundabout Art. So this afternoon, there was a meeting of the Salt Lake City Art Design Board. They had 18 applicants for the new public art that's going to go in at the roundabout. This is take 2 of that project because they couldn't decide on a finalist over the summer back in June. None of the projects kind of hit the right button. So they're doing it again. They had 18 applicants, including several residents of ELPCO, which is great to see. I unfortunately was not able to attend the meeting, but I know there's some really good applicants there, and they will be choosing finalists and asking about 3 finalists to submit their proposals. And we should be able to see those in the next couple of weeks or months as those come in. So again, that is the public art that's going in at the roundabout. Verizon, strangely enough, did not submit a project of a giant 45-foot black tower. Maybe that's they'll be the dark horse. They'll come in at the last minute, but there is one close by, so maybe they figure they've already got it. And now, so we can hopefully wrap up before 8:30. Tim Cosgrove from the Salt Lake City Mayor's office. Can you give us an update about what's going on at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? I'm sorry, no, the City County building.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone's patience. I actually had quite a few things. I actually need to address one thing very quickly. You know, Detective King, our CIU officer in Community Intelligence Unit, you know, there's ebbs and flows and sometimes changes within city government, and we work diligently to provide and address quality of life issues. And I think some of the changes that Chief Brown is trying to address and provide with the change in CIU is to increase patrol and response times to crime. But I would really be remiss if I didn't recognize and appreciate Detective David King for his services. You know, our CIU has been a hybrid. They've been assigned a difficult job, difficult duty. They're asked to interface with the mayor's office, with city council members, with departments, with divisions, with community councils, with public, interfacing with the residents of Salt Lake City and visitors to Salt Lake City. They're really the face of Salt Lake City Police Department. And one of my first experiences, and I've been here for a while with the city, 4 years now, going on 4 years. But one of my first experiences with Detective King was in his expertise with crime prevention through environmental design. We call it SEPTID. And I can't tell you what an invaluable resource he has been for us in our city. His intelligence, his care, his compassion, his ability to cite city codes and ordinances. He's just been a wealth of resource and information for me that really made a transition for me into city government and assisting people's requests one-on-one in a very professional and educated manner. And I really want everyone to know that there's things that go on behind the scenes that we don't always see, that we don't always know. that they're asked to do the tough job, working with civil enforcement to make sure that they have protection when they go into some of these tough sites with slumlords when we're asking them to clean up a drug deal and multiple city civil ordinance violations. And I just want everybody to know that I'm going to miss him, and I appreciate his service and all he's done for us and for our city. So I have to say that up front. Thank you. I didn't want to steal Councilmember Mano's thunder. I know he worked diligently on this as well with the Salt Lake City demolition ordinance change. That's one thing the mayor's office has been championing since she came in. So last night, Salt Lake City Council voted to change the city's demolition ordinance. And the proposed changes are kind of exciting to me because they'll help streamline the process for demolition on commercial and residential properties. They will remove the requirements for replacement use and landscape plans, bonding, and provide clarity to the enforcement process for boarding buildings in our civil enforcement. So I was quite excited about that. I am going to give an update with snow removal. Winter's coming up here. We've already had some snow, but you know, there's over 1,850 lane miles within Salt Lake City. We have 2 crews of 90 employees that split and are ensuring for people's public road safety, travel safety, I should say, during the ice storms, that they're ready to go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I'm going to attach some information that you can use on there to help our snow crews and with the removal of snow and sidewalk and some helpful facts and frequently asked questions that I'll attach on there. Councilmember Mano also spoke about Mayor Mendenhall's proposed financial support to assist city residents and businesses through this pandemic. She, with the partnership with UCA, UNP, and Community United, has created Rise Up Salt Lake City. And with the city council support, it proposed almost $1.5 million to put forward a distribution of a Salt Lake debit card that will be used for essential expenses for families and individuals who didn't qualify and couldn't access federal stimulus money, with an emphasis on undocumented and mixed residency status families, refugees who are living below that federal poverty threshold after COVID hit. Also, with the creation of a new location for the VITA, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Office on 265 East, 100 South. The last date for stimulus checks is, at least from the last funding that's been approved, will be this Saturday, November 21st. So I'll make sure I can include that link on so you can get information if you haven't received a stimulus check that you can participate. What else? Are there questions? I know I tried to cover a lot of issues fast.
Any questions for Tim? I know we can track snowplows using the GPS markers on top of them, right? There's a map that you can go and do that?
Yeah, it shows it online, and you can see they cover the primary streets first, the secondary streets, the residential streets, but you can see where the snowplows are actually at and when they're going to be in your neighborhood. Oh, I know. There's Monday is the deadline, or the the opening date for arts, culture, and events. So this is some good news. With the COVID and everything else going, the ACE Funding Award is a fund that has been set up with the mayor's office. It's incrementally grown over the years from $150,000 to over $200,000 that's available now. We usually provide between $500 and $10,000 for events. This is to help stimulate the arts, culture, and really community. You know, everybody knows ELPCO. Everybody recognizes 9th and 9th, and the community that you've built and worked so hard to establish there. We in the mayor's office and our mayor likes to support that and champion that. And I'll see if I can get that link to make sure that I include that so that you can have that information. But the applications are due by the end of December. So you want to make sure, and hopefully with the vaccine coming out, we'll be able to implement this and roll this out this year for 2021. Haley Leak, who's awesome and very exciting to work with, she's going to be the coordinator for ACE funding. So you'll have to get to know her. She's very likable, very, very fun, very nice to work with. So.
Thank you, Tim, for that reminder about the ACE funding. We always seem to get that in like 1 minute before it's due. We do hope we can have a 9th and 9th Street Festival in 2021. Last year, actually this year was the first year we'd canceled it in almost 30 years of running it. We could also do it like that rock concert where everyone was in these giant plastic bubbles kind of rolling around too, right? We could try something like that. We did receive ACE funding for that. We got $2,500 last year. Because we didn't have the festival, ELPCO actually donated that $2,500 to the Salt Lake Education Foundation to help with meals and hygiene products for kids in the Salt Lake School District. So we hope we can actually put that money to a festival this year, and we'll definitely, or next year, and we'll be applying for it. So any questions for Tim about some of the deadlines and proposals and projects that he's mentioned from the mayor's office? Okay. I just have a couple of quick announcements before we close off. Let me open up the notepad that has that. One is that we are looking for at-large members of ELPCO. When we approved our minutes, or our bylaws, I'm sorry, last month, we created 2 new board positions for at-large members that don't actually have to live in a neighborhood district that is open. They just have to live in ELPCO, have a business in ELPCO or nonprofit in ELPCO. And can participate as a board member. So please email us at elpcoslc@gmail.com if you're interested. We'll be starting that sort of application review process shortly. We've had 4 or 5 people already put their names in. We will not be having a meeting in December, most likely, unless something comes up, which with this year, you never know. But so this will probably be our last meeting of the year. We had it a week early due to Thanksgiving. We are still following several planning issues, including a split zone proposal on 13th East, which we're paying close attention to. So we'll probably be communicating about that and still working and sending out newsletters till the end of the year. But this will probably be our last meeting. If you do have an idea for something you want us to look at, like 5G towers or Google Fiber, let us know. And we'll have a month or 2 to work on that for our January meeting and continuing into the new year. And we do like projects and appreciate what William and Rebecca did on 5G tonight. That was very informative and helpful. Any other new business or ideas that folks want to mention before we sign off? Nope. Okay. Well, I apologize again for the bad email link or web link for the meeting. We'll fix that for our next meeting and make sure that we're all showing up in January 1903 for, 2021. We'll get it right. And we'll see you all in the new year. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.